Hey folks, today we're going to be working on the 10W project, and we're going to be installing the on-off direction feed rod or control rod. We're going to install the feed rod for the carriage feed and the threading lead screw, as well as the ELSR module that goes on the end of the frame. So we'll get that stuff all going. If we have time on this video, we'll also work on the way wipers. So it's going to be a busy day. Let's get going. Okay, got this on. So slid this one on this side first. We'll get this poked through. Alright, so we're going like this. Okay. That'll slide into there. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of whale oil. There's a bronze bushing in right here. So I'm just going to get a little bit of oil on that. Okay. Now one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to look back at some of the older videos, because there's some sort of a bushing that fits on the end of this thing that I don't remember taking off. It's on the other lathe and I don't see it on this one. Alright, so I'm going to go take a look at those videos and see what was on the end of that rod. Okay, so I looked on the other machine, I looked on the ELSR block that goes down here, and actually there's the collar that I thought was missing is actually part of the ELSR block. The taper pin goes in there, and then that's what actually connects this rod to the cam that's inside that other block that has all the switching to reverse the motor and shut everything off and have that whole thing work properly. Once I get this thing all back together, we'll go through that whole ELSR, how you operate it. Actually, Outside Screwball has a great video on how that whole thing works, so I'll probably go back and look at his video and get the little instructions on on how to use that. So that was pretty helpful. All right, so let's see. Next, we're going to go with the drive, the feed rod. So the issue that we're going to run into with the feed rod is we got to line up the worm gear in there. So don't think that that's going to be super easy. So we have to get something in there. I remember this from the last machine. This was not an easy thing to do. So what I'm doing is I'm just using the screwdriver to sort of pry up on the worm here, and that if you remember that sort of stack of bearings that were in there. So I did put a little grease on it to kind of help it along, to keep them in place. Yep, I remember this from last time. now I think the only thing it's hitting on is the last bearing here. Okay. Alright, so what we'll do, put a little bit of oil in the shaft. This goes into this other coupling, and what that does is gets attached with a roll pin. So I'm going to look for the larger size, which is that side, and this is the larger size here, or the larger end. Okay. This should just require a little gentle tap. Alright, appears to be seated all the way in there. That seems to work fine. Okay. Alright, we'll get the lead screw in there, keep on going. Alright, so I got the feed rod in, and so now I just got to get the tapered pin in there to secure that in place. Okay, give them some taps. Okay. All right. Flush there. This is kind of peculiar. I thought I might have switched these around. This tapered pin sticks out quite a bit, but it actually does on the other one too, so I might put a mark on it, take this pin out and grind it because I just don't like the way that looks. One of the things that I did read also on the Practical Machinist WE forums was an interesting way of getting these rods, shafts out of here. So basically, what they were telling you to do is you knock the pin out and then you engage the drive, and then you use the carriage actually to pull it out. And the same thing with the lead screw. So you engage the hat nuts, and then and when you do that, then you'll be able to you'll use the force of that to pull the nut out, pull the shaft out. So that's what we'll do. I'm just double checking this, the hat nuts engage when this is in the center position. This right here feeds that in, that feeds that out, and also changes the direction of this feed. Okay, so let's get the lead screw in. So on the end of this lead screw is a spherical bearing, like that. And then this is like a felt, like a felt, keeps the chips and everything out of here. So I'll put a little bit of whey oil on that to give it a little bit of something that goes on in there. I think this thing spins probably on the shaft and not in the bore of the part that this goes in, which would be the electric lead screw housing. So, all right, we'll get that guy on there as well. Take a look in there, see what's going on. I'll bring you back when I see what's going on. All right, so what's going on is not a major mystery. And it's funny, I just didn't remember this last time I put the carriage on the other lathe, is the threading dial definitely gets in the way. So, and I'll show you why. The threading dial engages obviously in the threads, but you have this big chunk of material right here that's, you know, in front of that. So obviously, you can't start the threads on the threading dial and shove it in. You have to get the threading dial out of the way so we get past this part. So now that I'm in this part, you know, this place, I kind of do remember this, and I remember this being a real challenge to get these parts back on. So I can't remember if I just loosened it and swung it out of the way, but there's really not much swinging that's going to happen here because it's got quite a bit of depth to go through, so I think it's just going to come out. I could feel those like little clamshells that hold this thing in place. Hope I'm right, because this will not be easy to put back together if I'm wrong. All right, let's see if I can throw it in there. Clever design. It just has to move a little tiny bit. So I have the taper pin holes lined up over here, probably out of the frame. You can't see that, so I'll get those guys lined up right there. So now I have to try and get this thing put back together. So what you see me struggling with right here is trying to get this threading dial to line up the way it needs to, so that I could get the rod properly, you know, the lead screw rod properly positioned. So you'll see in the next upcoming clip here, I figured out what I was doing wrong, and it was a little trip down memory lane when I worked on the other machine. So it'll all make sense here in a couple minutes when you see what's going on. Okay, what I figured out that I needed to do was, so right here, this is the drive gear for the threading lead screw. So I remembered from the other lathe, if I back this carriage all the way off, I can get underneath here and swing this thing to the right position, because if you remember, there's an unthreaded piece at the end that's the same diameter, so we can't get that in there with this thing fully positioned, because it wants to engage in the teeth, so it can't when there's no teeth. So you have to get it past that point, rotate this gear so that it engages, and then tighten the pin up, which is right out here. So tighten that guy up. All right. And then we can get this guy where it needs to be. And I'm going to tighten up the screws on the top. So right now I'm just kind of loosely tightening. I'm not going a little too crazy. Just want to make sure everything's going to fit correctly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the half nut like that, and it's smack dab on the number. And so now if I I gotta push the carriage forward manually because I'm off of the rack gear. So I get that going, and then, okay, so now we have it engaged. So because I have the half nut, I think you can see that, right? Because I have the half nut engaged, it's gonna pull the lead screw with it. So I'm gonna get this thing over here. So now I got it fairly close. I'm gonna disengage it and make sure I've got it set up correctly with the position for the taper pin. So now I have to re-engage it because I need to drive that shaft in. Okay, so now I got that in there, and I just want to make sure that I can engage the half nut on a number. You know, not some kind of oddball. I'm sure you can. I just want to just double check. Okay, and it does. All right. So I'll get you back when I start putting this end on where the electric lead screw box with it, because I got to take this plate off over here. I got all the wiring in here. There's a ton. I want to say there's like 3 or 4 switches, quite a bit of wiring. So I'll get that all set up, and then we'll bring you back. All right. So got the carriage back where it needs to be. Got this positioned here, and just want to get that. Bearing on here. Okay, so that's on there. Sorry you can't see, but what I'm hung up on here is this. Let me see if I can see it now. Is the felt right here that has to get tucked in there. I'm gonna go get like a little probe to push that in there. There we go. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, so we have these pins. Let me see what you're seeing. So they thread into here and here. The short one's going to go in there like dowel pins. So it looks like that's going to have to come out a little bit. Let's see, put this top one here. All right, so I got these pins to line up. So we're going to thread those guys in there. Whoop. There it goes. I need a bigger screwdriver. I'd like to get them in a fairly decent way before I go and put the the fasteners in that hold this whole block in. Okay, so let's get those guys in there. Grease, not blood. So I'm gonna leave them just a little loose, so in case as I finish threading these guys, then it's gonna pull into proper alignment. Back it out a little bit. I don't think it needs to be all that far. I mean, where's it gonna go, right? Famous last words. Okay. Perfect. Wrestling around with this stuff has made me pretty thirsty. Okay. So we're happy with that. So now, the last thing that we have to do here is get that lined up, and there's a little tapered pin that goes in there. And it's kind of a strange angle, so I have to see which way it wants to go in. Is it going this way, or is it going this way? Okay, it goes in that way. So let us get a hammer and a punch. Okay. So now let's take a step back and do whatever kind of little initial test we can do here. But that's power on, obviously. So we can see that that shaft is doing what it's supposed to do. Make sure that we have the carriage able to travel the whole way. Our threading dial is actually moving, which is a huge plus. Okay, at the end of that, bring it all the way forward. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now, if we lock the, let's see, I'm gonna do that. There, okay. So if we go to engage that, no goes. So it's, but yet if I spin this guy, you can see he's going. So we know that that's all good. And then we get it in the middle. Okay. All right, so that works. And we spin this lead screw, it's engaged and it's moving. Okay. So I got to figure out what's happening with this. So you know what it is? It's just got to get it right on top of the screw. There. Okay. All right. I think we're in great shape there. Next battle is going to be getting this end wired up. So I'm going to get that cover off here, get the wiring done. There's actually some caps that are going to go on here, hold these felts in. So I'll get that on, get this plate off, and then fish those wires through this assembly, it comes, the wires come out right here, so it's gonna be a bit of a fishing job.